9, 12, 10, 28, 2, 23.
This is Deep State Radio.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast. I am David Rothkopf. It is Thursday, so we talk about politics. Of course, these days, every day we talk about politics. But today we're lucky because we've got special perspectives from special friends, both of whom are recovering Republicans who are out there on the campaign trail and I think have some really interesting perspectives. First up, we've got our friend Olivia Troye, who many of you, well, she's just become a big media figure. You know, I remember Olivia when you were just, you know, some bureaucrat, a faceless bureaucrat, lost somewhere there within the system, and now she's everywhere that you look. Formerly of the national security community, the Department of Homeland Security, position in the Trump White House, handling all sorts of big things, and then very bravely began to lead the voices calling out Trump for who he is. How are you today, Olivia?
I'm good.
Good.
Ready. I'm ready for this election.
Yeah, I think we're all ready. Although, we'll talk about that in a second. And she is
Yes.
joined by another friend, Reed Galen, who has a political guru, one of the founders of the Lincoln Project. Now he's got a number of other projects of his own, including a podcast called The Homefront. How are you doing, Reed?
I'm great, David. Thanks for having me. And Olivia, always great to see you.
Hi, Reed.
So you guys, I know you've been out there. I've seen tweets and posts and so forth. And I think I'm just going to start with a, kind of banal question that is on everybody's mind from people who are out there. Like, Olivia, what's it looking to you like right now?
I'm hopeful. I have I got back. I was in Pennsylvania this past weekend, and I was just in North Carolina. I was in Greensboro. Kind of anywhere Trump goes, I go these days, just because I feel like I have to counter the lies with truth and facts and firsthand experiences about what this is and what this isn't. And, I met a few Republicans this weekend, and it was inspiring. I was on a farm in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and I had these two Republican couple came up to me and said, the wife and the husband said, we both voted for Trump, both times. And, they kind of cowered in their body language because, they're talking to me and I had just spoken. I was there with the Blue Wall bus tour of governors, 4 governors, Democrats. And I looked at them and I said, how are you feeling about things? And they said, we've been very quiet. We're going to vote for Kamala this time. And then the wife looks at me and says, but you know what? I'm done being quiet. I'm going to start talking to people about this. And she's like, because today was inspiring. And I'm seeing other Republicans, and I think if they can do it, then so can I. And I share that story because to me, it filled my heart with hope because we're less than 2 weeks out of the election. There's still hearts and minds to win over. And they're evident of that, right? Where they're paying attention and they're like, wait a second, and they're taking a step back. So that gives me hope. I think there's, every vote will matter, as we all know here. And it's not easy. And I think the bullies are loud. But I'm hopeful that there'll be even quiet voters going in, knowing what's at stake in this election. I don't know. How are you feeling about things, Reed? I know you're also out there on the ground.
Look, I think that, we'd all like it to be a blowout for Vice President Harris, and it very well might be. But I think we should assume everything is as close as it looks. I do think the vice president will be successful. There's an expression, David, that, campaigns matter on the margins. Harris has a good campaign, I think an especially good ground game. Trump has always had bad campaigns because they are predicated on him and only him. And when you outsource your ground game to both Elon Musk and a bunch of political consultants who work for someone who hates you, not a great way to go. But I also think that there are a lot of, as Olivia just mentioned, a lot of those Republicans, I think the Nikki Haley folks or, the Haley voters for Harris have been doing excellent work. And so I think, come November 5th, that Harris is likely to win on the strength of her own ground game, and Trump is likely to lose, as he did in places like Wisconsin and Georgia, on the weakness of an undervote that he is likely to see in a lot of places. Because, if let's just say for argument's sake, the 15% of Haley voters, let's say half of those go back to Trump, he still loses. Let's say 2/3 of those go back to Trump, he still loses. And she might do a rally for them or whatever, but I'm not sure that's enough to get them back. But I'll tell you this, I think from my perspective, I'd much rather be doing what Olivia and I are doing, which is out on the ground, knocking on doors, talking to voters. I mean, we are just inundated everywhere we go with just the same bad, mostly campaign ads. And I just don't know that anybody's watching. I think the ROI on those died probably a month ago, if not sooner. And so from my perspective, this is going to be won or lost at the doors.
Okay, well, let me look at a story from this week because I thought of you, Olivia. I think of you many times a day, Olivia, but I thought of you with regard to this.
Please keep thinking of me, because if he comes back into office, I'll be writing you from jail. So send care packages.
Olivia and I are learning Morse code together so we could tap to each other.
Yes, we're trying to figure out how we tap on the wall and communicate.
Well, hey, look, I wrote something this week saying if you've got an enemies list, I want to be on it. So right. I hopefully I'll be there with you. But I suspect you followed very closely the General Kelly story since you worked there and you know him and you respect him. And I'd be very interested in your personal take on those stories, Olivia.
Well, I was horrified at the Hitler mention. And I've been even more horrified in the aftermath of watching Republicans try to defend it. Like, I think I don't know what's more horrifying. I believe General Kelly because I have tremendous respect for him, and he's got a tremendous record of service serving our country. And I did work with him at DHS, and I worked with him in the White House before he left. And I have to say that it was shocking, but then having heard Trump laud people like Putin firsthand, having heard him talk about Maduro in a positive way at times, like, it tracks, right? The pattern of behavior repeats itself, as horrifying as it was to actually hear that. I say that it's the aftermath has been equally as upsetting, was just because I watched people like that I used to respect, that I used to really respect highly, like Chris Sununu, go out there and tap dance around it, not recognize it, and others who are trying to cover up, people like who are still have served their country as well, like Congressman Mike Waltz. I can't believe, like, I saw the audacity of these people trying to actually give this a pass. And I don't know how you do that, because no praise of Hitler is ever acceptable. And it should be appalling to every person to hear Trump said he wanted Hitler-like generals, right? Because what he's saying is, I want the military to disobey their oath to the Constitution, and I want loyalty to one person, me. And that goes against everything that every military person, like, takes an oath to. So I just, it was, I'm glad he went on the record. I know that this has been weighing. I've been talking to some of the national security people and military leaders who served during the Trump administration. I know that there are mixed feelings on it. I know there's, do they get involved? It's politicizing in some ways. There's concern about that, the politics of it. And I also know that they're worried about their security. And look, as someone, we all know what that comes with. So I give, I'm really grateful that General Kelly went on the record at this time and finally said, like, I've just got to, people need to hear it from me directly on what it is that I witnessed.
Reed, we've talked about this before, and I've talked to Olivia about it. And frankly, clearly it's driven both of you on political paths you may never have expected. But, I remember working with Republicans a couple of decades ago, and there were a couple of issues where there was never any trouble getting agreement. Like, Hitler was bad.
Right. Russia,
You
not
know,
good.
Russia's not good.
Right.
Democracy is good. Fascism is bad. That kind of thing. And we're often in a place, as Olivia says, where the first reaction of people is to say, "Oh well, he didn't mean it," or "Well, you know, uh, maybe he was talking about Hitler's generals who weren't Nazis. Maybe he didn't know that Hitler's generals were Nazis, or some other kind of incredible nonsense."
Right.
To what do you attribute all this shift?
Well, I think it's an important. There's the like the Doppler shift thing, right? Let's be clear. It's been almost 10 years since Trump came down the escalator. It's hard to believe that, right? It's been almost a decade. So when people say, how can some Republican voters be so stupid? Like, there are people who are willfully blind, and then there are people who have overweening ambition, like the Chris Sununu's of the world. But we shouldn't underestimate the power of right-wing dominated media, not only starting with Donald Trump, but 30 years of Rupert Murdoch and Fox News, and 50 years of Rush Limbaugh before that. I mean, all of this stuff, David, is decades in the making. Billions of dollars every cycle flowing into these places. Education, philosophical thought. It's the Heritage Foundation, it's the Claremont Institute, it's all of this stuff, right, that has been at work. And we've seen it in certain places, the Republican Party gobbling up statewide offices and legislative houses, basically uncontested for the past 25 or 30 years. And so we didn't collectively understand what we were up against, even when I was in the party. Right. We didn't, we used to say, I have this expression that, like, on the 2004 Bush campaign, you sit in the big conference room and there's one guy who represents the social and the evangelical community on the whole campaign. And we were so arrogant. We thought, David, that we were in there. He was in there with us. And it turned out we were in there with him. Right. We were just all too blind and arrogant to see it. That this was always something that was bubbling under the surface. And if the definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity, this movement prepared for 50 years and their opportunity was Donald Trump. And now we're 9.5 years downstream of that. And so the party, he is a normal Republican now. He is the representative of Republican voters now, whether you want to believe it or not. That's what they're looking for. And that's what they're willing to go along with.
Olivia, I just got in my inbox, I get all these Harris things, and it says new ad. And it says here, VP Harris speaks to those who, quote, may not always agree with me, promises to lift up the middle class and be a president for all Americans. And you've been in the middle of this. You've been in the, these various events where there's active outreach to disaffected Republicans and independents. You talked a little bit about some experiences here, but some people are saying, she shouldn't be focused on that. She should be focused on the turnout of Democrats, or she should, she's drifting away from being progressive and she's gone too centrist. And I'm just wondering, what do you think when you hear that?
Look, I think she's doing an amazing job of representing her commitment to being a president for all. And I think it's important to be out there doing this type of outreach. I think it's to her credit and Tim Walz's credit that they have been able to garner this coalition. And I think it is representative that it spans the gamut, right? When you look at it, you've got like the Evangelicals for Harris coalition growing. You've got, the white dudes for Harris held a Zoom. You've got, Republicans significantly growing in this space. I think today it was announced that former Congressman Fred Upton just came out and endorsed Kamala Harris. And I think that is why this matters, because I think she is showing a commitment saying that I am going to work in a bipartisan fashion. I'm going to take different viewpoints because I believe that it makes me a stronger leader. And she said this, right? I think she said it at her town hall last night. I think that speaks to her credibility and her ability to serve in the role as president in a moment that really matters for our country, where we do need to be more unified and we need to get back to a position where we are able to actually do real policy and do real solutions. And hopefully she can exemplify that. And, I understand the criticism, though she's getting too progressive. Like, why are you using Trump's talking points? because those are Trump talking points. That's what he always says, because they're trying to pin her in this corner. You're going to tell me that Donald Trump is being representative for all of us? Are you kidding me? He represents one person, himself. And the extremists that are the enablers that are going to be in office with him want nothing to do with this greater coalition that is supporting Kamala Harris. I think we all need to be very, very real about this, right? What this is and what it isn't. I mean, it's going to be Kash Patel, Stephen Miller's, Mike Flynn's of the world. I mean, let's think about that. That's what that future looks like with Donald Trump. I want a future with Kamala Harris where she's saying she's going to, she's talking about putting a Republican on her cabinet, a moderate, traditional conservative to provide a different viewpoint. I think that speaks loudly to her commitment, saying, I am going to meet people halfway and I want to be representative of the people and want to represent that to the world. And I do think the world is watching every single day. I think the entire world is watching what's going to happen in this election.
So let's flash forward 12 days, Reed.
Mm-hmm.
She won. Why did she win? Where did she win?
Well, I will say this. Let me just, I spoke to a very, considerable crowd of very dedicated New York City Democrats this week. And what I reminded them was you can have purity or you can have victory, but you can't have both. You got to make a choice, right? I'd love to have purity and victory. It's not what you get. And I think sometimes our friends on the Democratic side of the aisle, they want to have a big tent, but not a big enough door, if that makes sense. They make it too hard to get in and too hard to want to stay there. If she wins again, I think she will win in Wisconsin. I think she will win in Michigan. I think she will win in Pennsylvania on the strength of the kinds of people that I spoke to and the kinds of people that Olivia have spoken to. I'd love to say it's North Carolina, but North Carolina is one of those places I'll believe it when I see it. Although I think that, the fact that Josh Stein is so far ahead is a good thing. Georgia, I think, is good, but again, tough. Nevada is a cloudy mess to me. And Arizona, I think Harris could have a chance because the Republican Party there is still so split because of Donald Trump and Kari Lake's discussions and disdain and, frankly, hatred of John McCain, which I think still has a powerful force for a lot of Republicans there. So I think that, again, it will be that she has helped create probably the broadest ideological coalition we've seen maybe since Reagan in 1984. I'm not saying she's going to win 49 states, but I think it's going to take a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't agree on anything. And I've said that repeatedly. We don't have to agree on everything. And I'm not asking anybody to. We have to agree on one thing, that there's one option that's viable and there's one that's not for the future of the country. And to me, it's a no-brainer. But again, we got a lot of headwinds. We've got a lot of noise. And as we come to this next 12 days, David, we should not be under any illusion that when Harris starts to win in these places, the Trump people are already out there causing trouble. They're already out there filing lawsuits. And now you're going to have a bunch of lone wolves and a bunch of nuts out there trying to cause trouble, not for the sake of making sure that Olivia's vote for Kamala Harris goes to Donald Trump, but for the sake of saying, how do we know who could possibly win, right? And create all of the, confusion and insanity and chaos that they tried to do ad hoc 4 years ago that they've now been planning for. But thank God he's not in office to try and make it a reality.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I agree with you. And I have had a number of other discussions, including on one of our other podcasts today with Norm Ornstein, about there is a kind of predisposition among half the people in her campaign to say the sky is falling. It's super close. And if she wins, it'll just be by a little bit. And I tend to think that it's better to communicate that you've got some momentum and to have some confidence. But having said that, these people are playing also into Trump's hands. Because at 10 o'clock, I mean, Olivia, you probably gamed this out in your head 5 times, but 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on the night of November 5th, I don't care what happens. There could be a snowstorm, a tsunami, an asteroid could hit the Earth. Trump's going to come out and say, I won.
100%.
It's insane. It's insane that everybody knows it. And he's going to,
and everybody that expects it. Yeah.
And so if they say, well, it was close, then people are going to go, well, they said it was close. And, then we have to count all these ballots for the next 8 weeks. and we'll, see what, kind of shenanigans can get by. You're certainly not. Are you expecting to just go to bed at midnight on November 5th and say, I can sleep easy? He's gone, Olivia?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I tell myself that this election is through January.
Right.
That's where I have mentally prepared myself. Until I see a transition of power and Kamala Harris is being inaugurated, that in my head, in my calculus, is election day. Can you believe that? That's how I view it, which is really sad. That's a really sad statement.
You mean inauguration? You mean inauguration day? Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I'm
also,
saying in my head that is the final statement on the election that she won. Does that make sense? Like, yes.
Also, that much more important, David, why it's crucial for the Democrats to take the U.S. House too. If we assume that it's very difficult for them to maintain the Senate, crucial for them to take the U.S. House, be seated on January 3rd, and be there for certification on January 6th.
Because the House ultimately decides. But even if the Democrats do take the House, when the House decides, it votes by state.
Yes, by delegation. Yes.
By delegation. And the Democrats could win the majority, but still not control the majority of states.
Right. I think it's a 26-22 disparate, and it won't change that much. It won't be 25-25 or, the Democrats won't take the delegation count this year.
Yeah. And look, we've got to be patient though, too, right? I know we're talking about how serious and what this is going to look like afterwards, but the reality is, I think what Pennsylvania, I was up there and they're talking about the fact that they can't actually start counting the mail-in ballots till that morning. And so they really are expecting that they could possibly be a few days when they're done. So it could take till this following Saturday. So, yes, if you're asking me if I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock or 10, actually, I know already I'm going to be staying up all night. I did that in 2016 with a bottle of wine. So
it was rum for me, but yeah.
Yeah. I remember getting up and going into DHS saying, wow, my job just completely changed the next morning when I was walking into the work that day. But yeah, I'll still be staying up but I think we should be expecting that it'll be a few days before we actually have a clearer picture of what it is. And the problem with that, as the three of us know, is that gives several days of the right-wing propaganda machine to fuel off of each other. And unfortunately, elected officials who will fall back in line and do what they did in 2020. And we just need to be vigilant and understand that that's what we're up against.
Yeah, or the Russian government. Let's
absolutely.
not leave them out, right?
Yes.
They don't have to rig the election.
No.
They just have to produce 5 dubious ballots someplace that call the whole thing into question, right?
Yes.
With deep fakes. Is that your expectation, Reed?
Yes,
absolutely.
With the biggest social media presence of Elon Musk perpetuating all of it.
100%. I agree. Yeah. Olivia's 100% right. Yeah. My guess is they still probably already have some of this stuff in the can, right? Ready to start rolling it out. Now, the only way to do it is our good friend Simon Rosenberg has said many times, is to bury them under a pile of ballots so big they can't try and steal it. They can't try and do this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, that is a good place to end. And of course, Simon is here at this point every week or two, and we're talking about this. And he was guardedly optimistic. You guys sound guardedly optimistic. I am a Jewish guy from New Jersey, and so I fear the worst at all times, even in the best of times.
Well, you'll keep us honest then, David.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'll just work. Even if things are good,
Right.
Well, it's too sunny here on the beach. I'm going to get skin cancer. Anyway.
Well,
it
I'm
is
Catholic and Jewish and the daughter of a Mexican mom, so there's a lot happening on my end.
Yeah, well,
I'm very concerned.
And you're also real smart, and you're a hero of mine. So I'm really glad you're here, and thank you for joining us. Reed, you're also doing the most important kind of work. Keep it up, and hopefully we'll come back in a couple of weeks. And you'll be over the bottle of wine or the box of wine or whatever it was
Right.
That did it for you on election night. We can have a coherent conversation then.
Thanks,
but
David.
Until then,
Great.
Keep it up. Thanks a lot, guys. So in the first half of the show, we talked to Olivia, we talked to Reed, we talked about what they were seeing. They, of course, are former Republicans who have been seeing the campaign up close and on the ground. I wanted to get a perspective from somebody who is a Kamala Harris OG. I mean, when I'm talking to the people in the campaign, sometimes they say I'm an OG because I've been involved for a few years. Even longer than me, Julie Zebrak, who is an attorney. She was a delegate at the convention this summer. She is now on the ground in her home state or the state you grew up, the home state of Georgia, which is a battleground. And frankly, of all the states that I hear about, it's one of the ones I hear, kind of some positive stuff out of. There's still some hope about it. Every podcast we do this week, people say I'm guardedly optimistic. But then they all get off the air and they go, "I'm really worried." Where it's just you and me and like 20,000 people. Where
That's
are you,
fine.
Julie?
Of course, my closest friends.
Yeah, but so where being there, being on the ground,
Right.
knocking on doors, talking to people. What's the vibe?
So honestly, it depends on the day. So I mean, I will tell you, thank you for having me, by the way. Hello from the Metro Atlanta area, Cobb County right now. So I will tell you that I went to the Kamala Usher rally on Saturday with like 20,000 people fired up for hours. It was amazing energy and I felt fabulous. And then a different day, I knock on doors in Cobb County and I feel less fabulous. I'm in a battleground state and it feels like a battleground state. As you know, I live right outside DC in Bethesda, Maryland normally. And I grew up here in Atlanta and realized that it would make sense for me to come back here for the last 3 weeks because I know my way around and I've got a network here and I get to stay with my dad for 3 weeks first time since high school. So I'm really glad to be here, but there are days where it doesn't feel as positive as I wish. And then there are other days where I feel great. I think that, you get little wins. I will tell you, just before I hopped on the call, I went door knocking. I only went to like 10 houses, but I got a guy probably in his low 60s. I spoke to him and he told me, and this is what I'm hearing a lot on the ground, he doesn't like Trump at all, but he wasn't quite to yes yet for Kamala. And we spoke for about 10 minutes. He was very highly informed. I mean, talked to me about immigration. He knew the Republicans had blocked the bill, this kind of thing. He knows it all. He knows he's just not there yet. By the time we were done with our chat, he told me I had moved him from 49 Trump, 51 Kamala to 45 Trump, 55 Kamala. And I felt like that was a win. I moved him up. I bumped him up. I explained to him that I'm here for 3 weeks and that I'm only here for 3 weeks, not just to defeat Trump, but because I believe in Kamala Harris. And so you take those wins, other houses, not so much, but it's okay. I mean, I see the incredible infrastructure here on the ground. We are all over the Metro Atlanta area, and there's a cajillion events scheduled this weekend. I've seen a lot of out-of-staters come, and I think it was on Sunday, we had 40 people from a group called Common Power in town and at my little office in North Cobb. And they were from all over the country, Maine, Washington State, Tennessee, all over the place. They're coming in and they're here to knock doors. We're having a women's surge, Women for Harris surge this Saturday. Buses are coming from Greenville and Columbia, South Carolina to come knock doors in Atlanta. So I am cautiously optimistic. I see the fight in everybody here, and I think it's going to be a fight. And that's honestly where I am.
So what's resonating? I mean, the problem with campaigns is after they go on for a while, everybody becomes an expert. I turn on the TV and there are all these experts. She should do this. She should do that. And then I talk to people. She should do this. She should do that. To me, I'm like you, right? I thought she was great 6 years ago.
Begin with.
And I think she's done a spectacularly good job. But what's resonating? Like when I'm just interested, like you're in Georgia, and like right now, there are a couple sides to the campaign. There's Kamala Harris, politics of joy. There's Kamala Harris, politician with an agenda. Here are 15 items. Want to talk about home care? And then there's Kamala Harris, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a terrible person, and so forth. Right. What? I mean, is it everything, or is something really the meat of it?
I would say, so a lot of our effort right now, a lot of what we're seeing when we knock on doors is because we're so close to the end. And early voting, by the way, started last week in Atlanta. So I think it was on the 15th. I think the 15th it started. So we're really doing what they call get out the vote, which is just reminding people to vote early and making sure that they're planning on voting and trying to pin them down about their vote. But when I do get to have substantive conversations like I had today, I would say the economy and immigration are the topics that people are raising with me. So, we sort of default to talking about the fact that the Republicans blocked the bipartisan immigration bill. With the economy, we talk about how strong, how many jobs there are, inflation's going down. We talk about, how the stock market's doing. We're talking about the housing plan that the vice president has, talking about small businesses and how she plans to lift them up and support them. So I would say, nobody's opening the door and being like, I'm worried about women's reproductive rights and I don't know who to vote for. Like, that's never a topic. It's really immigration and economy when people are there. And to be honest, I have heard so many times, because I have a lot of people here that I know that are voting for Kamala, like in my personal network. And what they tell me is they know a lot of people who are anti-Trump, but not yet for Kamala. And so I'm like, get me in front of them. Get me in front of them. Like, can you host me at your house? I did have somebody host me with 30 suburban women, 20 in the room and 10 on a Zoom. And that was great because I got to talk for an hour and a half, much more personally, about their concerns and about the vice president and Doug and about who they are as people. And I can definitely, get people where they need to be. It's just a matter of getting me in front of them. And that's the part that I want to get in front of everybody who says they're never Trump, but not yet her. So the other thing I'm hearing, David, and I don't know if you heard this from your folks just before with Reed or Olivia, but the thing that I, sort of blows my mind is the people who are saying they're just not going to vote at all. And that to me is really hard. I haven't had so many doors knocked with that reaction, but just anecdotally talking to Kamala voters here that I know, and they're telling me that that's a lot of what they're hearing. So that concerns me.
It's concerning, and it manifests itself for a lot of reasons. And I don't think I'm going to get into all of them right now, but perhaps tangentially to that, you and I are both Jewish people, and maybe you watched
and that's a part of it.
The CNN thing last night, and I thought there was this kind of stunning and vaguely bizarre moment where Anderson Cooper goes, well, some people say Trump will be better for the Jews, and she then gave an answer, and I was like, what? Wait a second. Are you saying the guy who likes Adolf Hitler is going to be Adolf Hitler?
Right.
That's like, that is a disqualifier.
Right.
But and she didn't say it, but I was shouting it at the TV.
Right. Well, yes, exactly. And look, we've been hearing for the last 36 hours the fascist commentary, or more than that, since General Mark Milley said fascist. Now John Kelly is calling him a fascist.
And she did last night.
Yes, and she did, thankfully, because look, they gave her permission to do that. You've got two people who work very closely. You know, somebody told me, I don't like the name calling. Well, this isn't name calling. This is like, wake up, y'all. This is what we have in front of us. And if his own people, these longtime aides who see him up close, are comfortable using that word, then by all means, she has permission to use that word. You know, you and I have talked before, you know, that I have been hearing from members of the Jewish community, and it tends to be in the battleground stage that I'm hearing it, that they feel Trump is stronger on Israel. And for some reason, they have done backflips to put out of their heads all of his anti-Semitic tropes and the tropes of the people he associates with. I read somewhere, I don't know if you saw this, but that Nick Fuentes is now saying that Trump is too pro-Israel for him or something like that, you know, the neo-Nazi. So anyways, all this being said, what I have seen over since May is that the amount of disinformation flowing to the Jewish community in battleground states has really sort of had people a little confused. And that's been one of my efforts here in Atlanta, is getting to talk to people and sort of recenter them, if I can, on the fact that his loyalty to Israel has nothing to do with us as Jews. It has to do with this white Christian evangelical part of him. It has to do, you know, part of his base, not part of him. And it has to do with wanting to win the election. And you know, I point out regularly how John Bolton, his former national security advisor, has said loud and clear, if, you know, just because he was supportive of Israel in his first term doesn't mean he's going to be supportive in his second term. And I will say that I've had these conversations here in Georgia, and it's not always getting through. And there's a lot of disinformation, and, people
It's
say
not
to me,
even it's not even disinformation, though. Some of it is, you know, Trump said the other day that he was on the phone to Netanyahu every day, right? And you know Netanyahu wants Trump to win.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are a number of organizations that are close to Netanyahu that are going out there and saying, loyalty test time. You've got to prove yourself. Meanwhile, Netanyahu at the same time is dialing up Gaza and Lebanon in a way that makes progressives go, hey, wait a minute, you know, we need you to distance yourself, because he knows that will split the Jews and the Democratic Party. And I think it's a very conscious decision.
Right. Well, and when you look, I mean, the thing that's so ironic is you look at, Putin sending his security team to talk with, I don't know, one of his, I forget what the title of the guy was, to meet with the Iranians. You know, we know Trump is, in the fold in some way with Putin. And if Putin's trying to build his relationships with Iran, how is that going to help the Jews? How is that going to help Israel? It's just not it's not adding up. And yet folks are sort of embedded in this thought process. They don't, I mean, a lot of people I've talked to be honest, they get offended. They think that Biden and Harris don't like Netanyahu, but they disregard the fact that so many of the Israeli people don't like Netanyahu, and that the hostage families are, begging for Netanyahu to change course. And so there's this whole cycle of, I mean, it's not disinformation. It's just confusion over who to listen to and who to believe. And at the end of the day, I don't know, I'm listening to what the hostage families want, and I'm listening to the national security experts in the United States on it. But at the end of the day, I am very interested to see where the Jewish vote falls in some of these battleground states. And I can see the efforts that they're making here. Trump was in Zebulon, Georgia yesterday, speaking about, and I don't know if you know this, but the Harris campaign has made a big effort. They have they sent Richie Torres and the Jewish outreach director, Elon Goldenberg, to Georgia a couple weeks ago to meet with members of the Jewish community to talk about the vice president's record. And we had a great event down here. I was happy to be at it. Rumor has it Doug Emhoff may be in town. I know he was in town a couple weeks ago. Rumor has it he may be back in town over the coming days in Georgia, because we know how important it is to have the Jewish community, feeling confident about Kamala Harris. I think Trump's visit yesterday, I had originally heard he was coming for an anti-Semitism event. I think that's where he spoke about his BFF Netanyahu and that they're speaking every day. And if that builds confidence with some in the Jewish community, I don't really know what to say to that, because what I'm confident in is what our national security apparatus is doing and what our foreign policy apparatus is doing. And at the end of the day, I trust Joe Biden and Kamala Harris more than I trust anybody who is a convicted felon or otherwise under investigation. So,
yeah, but and by the way, I will add, and I'm not associating you with this remark. Netanyahu's under investigation, and sometimes you can be pro-Israel and not pro a particular politician or part of the government, right?
Well, exactly. We assume people were pro-America during the Trump years, but not pro-Trump. It's the same thing in this direction. But I will, sort of coming back to Georgia for a second and just outside of the Jewish vote. I wanted to tell you, if you don't mind, a couple cute stories from my door knocking. I was in an apartment complex the other day, walking around. An apartment complexes in Atlanta are, you have like a bunch of low-rise buildings that are like all in a community. So it feels like a neighborhood. So I'm walking around. We leave what's called lit at somebody's door. When you knock and they're not home, you put down the Kamala materials. And a couple minutes later, an African-American woman comes running out and she's like, "You left this at my door." And we were like, "Yeah," because she seemed happy. She's like, "I'm so happy you're here. I already voted." And like having that, just feedback and like seeing how excited she was terrific. We then walking around, this guy walks by. And by the way, I'm going to remind you, everybody in Atlanta is friendly. Even if they're Trump voters, they're friendly. Everybody's polite. There's no obnoxious behavior when I'm knocking at doors.
I got to say, I'm from New York, and I find that it always makes me a little
unsettling.
Out. Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable.
I'm like, they'll just smile at you before they stab you in the back. But anyways, and so everybody's been lovely, and I have been grateful for that. So, and I was a little nervous before I came. But anyways, we're walking around this same apartment complex, and this guy walks by and says hi, because people are friendly. And I'm with somebody, I'm canvassing with a guy. And the guy I'm with yells at this gentleman and says, "Did you vote?" And the gentleman says, "Yeah." And my friend says, "Who'd you vote for?" And the guy says, "I'm not going to say," and keeps walking. So we assume this guy is a Trump voter because he's not answering us how we want. And I have my, I'm always wearing my gear. I have Kamala stuff on. 5 minutes later, this gentleman drives by. He's a middle-aged white man, rolls down his window, and he says, "I voted for Kamala. I just can't yell it out loud." So I think, I've had some doors that I've knocked where the wife opens very nice house, blonde hair, blue eye wife opens the door. She says, super sweet, "We don't talk politics in our house." And then she gives me a look like, nodding, get with the eye contact, like I'm on board. But so it's just very different than our, DC, New York existence. People here are definitely keep it more close to the vest. And it's just interesting because when you have those moments, you're like, wow, this just reaffirms why I would never believe the polls, because we don't know what people are going to do. And these husband-wife dynamics, we don't know if what the husbands are thinking their wives are voting around here, and the wives, doing their own thing. I don't know if you saw that commercial. There's some ad or something about a husband and wife getting out of a pickup truck. And he says something like, we're on the same page, right? And she just nods and she goes in and she casts her vote and they walk back to the car. But, she's got this mischievous look in her face. So there's definitely, that's an ad, but there's definitely this message being sent. Women, your votes are private. So do what you need to do. Vote your conscience.
It's completely alien to my life experience, but I understand. I understand. We've got just 2 minutes left, but I wanted to sort of end with where I ended with Olivia and Reed, because we look at this, and I don't think anybody expects election night to be the end. And that, in a lot of states, but particularly in states like the one you're in, we can expect challenges. And how do we know that? Well, you're in Georgia. We've seen this movie before. And I'm just wondering, do you think the campaign is prepared? And is that your expectation, that all this work you've done in Georgia will not sort of manifest itself in a final decision until like January or, whatever?
I'm going to say January. I'm not going to say January. Look, everybody's being
Olivia said Inauguration Day, so
yeah.
that's
I
where
will tell you, I will not be sleeping well until after Inauguration Day. So, I mean, that in terms of getting it sorted out here in Georgia, I think we're going to know before that. Look, everybody says voting has gone well. I have not heard any bad stories. We know there's going to be shenanigans, and that's what we tell everybody, that there's going to be shenanigans, so get your vote in now. Don't wait till the day of. As far as the campaign, I mean, they have thousands of lawyers who have been, gaming this out and are ready to go with whatever possible litigation we can anticipate after, ahead of and after the results come in. And I'm super confident in the Harris Walz campaign that they have invested and are ready to roll, and that they have top lawyers on this across the board. So that part is good. And the voter protection work in terms of, the hotlines and all that, everybody's, there are literally signs around Georgia that say, if you have issues voting, like, signs in the ground, you just got all blurry. So anyways, I think we're ready to go. I think, we're much more prepared than last time. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not nervous. And I'm, as I've told people outside of the DC area, I view Election Day as phase 1 of this process. And we got to get through that first, and then we have more to come. And I have my calendar pretty clear, except for a short trip in December. Through the end of January, I'm not planning a lot of optional trips because I want to be ready to do whatever I can as a lawyer and whatever else we need to do to make sure we get her inaugurated. Is that a word? In 2020?
It is. It is a word. It not only is it a word, it's my favorite word. But it is super great of you to join us. You're a hero. You're doing heroic work. And I love reading, getting the little updates of what you're doing. And I hope that your guarded optimism gets less guarded and more optimistic as we get closer and closer. Yep. And we'll circle back for more. I look forward to hearing how it goes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to celebrating with you in January in DC. Okay.
Yeah, or from November to January. This is a whole other approach. Is just celebrate, each positive step.
Right.
I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'm also looking forward, having been writing and being on TV and doing podcasts for 10 years about Donald Trump. I'm so looking forward to never mentioning his name again. I cannot tell you.
I am with you. Imagine being free and clear. What a dream. We're going to do it.
It really is. All right. Thank you.
David.
And we'll see you soon, Julie.
Great. Bye.
Bye-bye.